Away Praise Radio, where we voice the gospel. I bring you real talk on real issues that affects our communities every single day. As you can see, there's a lot of action going on. We are actually here live at Mobile 2018. And when I tell you, it has been nothing short of fabulous. When you are just in the midst of beautiful Black women who are business owners doing their thing. If you are a business owner, not even if you're Black, not even if you're a woman, you needed to be at this conference. Unfortunately, today is the last day. However, the conference will be going on next year, so you need to mark your calendars for October 2019. There is a wealth of information in this room and just infectious, attitudes. And I am so blessed and proud to be a part of TPN, which is the Pinkpreneur Network, who hosts MogulCon every single year. I'm telling you, my sister right here to my left is a testament of what the Pinkpreneur can do.
Absolutely.
This is Dr. Jada Moore Ruffin. And, Jada and I have been in a mastermind group with the fabulous Dr. Felicia Phillips over the last year. And, I am so blessed to have been in this group because I maybe wouldn't have even met Jada if I hadn't been in this group. So isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
The world is so small.
Yeah.
It is so small. But
But we know that there are no accidents.
Look here, God don't make mistakes.
No.
And so
For divine time.
It's divine time. And then this lady to my right, Deanna Phillips, I've known her since, about 15 plus years. Deanna actually was my business consultant, and she set up my first medical practice, and we've just been tied at the hip ever since. So I am so glad that I know these people. They are in my tribe. If you don't have a good tribe, you can't make it to the top. You cannot break your glass ceiling and continue to exceed. You have got to have a tribe behind you. So MogulCon 2019, you need to be here. Today's show, we're going to be talking about diabetes. It is Diabetes Awareness Month, and it's also Diabetic Eye Awareness Month. So we got a lot going on in the month of November, but I brought these two guests on for a reason. Dr. Jada actually specializes in bariatric and obesity medicine, which will discuss some of the risks that are involved with diabetes. And then Deanna is actually a patient. She actually lives with diabetes. So we're going to talk about what she does as far as living with it, how, her day-to-day activities impacts her health, and it's going to be a great show. I'm just excited to have you all here.
Thank you.
But let me tell you something. I need to read these bios because these people are fabulous, and I just cannot believe I know them. Like, I love this. I love this. I love this. This is what the network does, y'all. So I'm going to first read Dr. Jada's bio, Real, which is Dr. Jada's practice. And she's a seasoned, compassionate, down-to-earth, and lifelong learner who loves to solve medical problems using a whole person concept. A woman after my own heart, because that's exactly what I preach. You can't just know specific body parts. You got to know the whole person.
Yes.
As a highly accomplished physician with well over 2 decades of experience in caring for men, women, and children of all ages as a wellness-based primary care specialist, Dr. Jada, as most call her, is known for incorporating nutrition, lifestyle, and wellness principles into her comprehensive care. Dr. Jada is also a certified integrative nutrition coach by the Institute of Integrative Nutrition in New York City. The innovative training allowed her to gain knowledge in the area of nutritional health that most physicians will never experience in their medical careers. You got that right. Because, even though we may preach, you got to eat right, many physicians are not preaching exactly what that means. So I'm glad that you're doing that.
And they're not practicing.
Yes. How about that one? Let's go there.
Right.
Now, recognizing the importance of hormone balance as a critical part of healthy aging, Dr. Jada became a certified practitioner for BioT, a medical pellet hormone therapy optimization system. With years of experience in providing preventative care, as well as diagnosing and managing complex diseases and health conditions, Dr. Jada is well equipped to lead clients through weight loss and wellness journey safely and skillfully, because that's important. Like when people talk about weight loss, they think of something real quick. You didn't gain that weight real quick, so you're not going to take it off real quick either. It's got to be done safely. Dr. Jada has trained extensively, completing residency at Grant Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. As you all know, I'm from Ohio. I trained at Ohio State, and Grant is one of our hospitals where we trained at.
Right. That's right.
That's the other.
I didn't realize we had that.
Exactly. Me neither. Until you said, I was like, what?
Yeah,
you were in my neck of the woods.
Yes, for 10 years.
For 10 years. And a postdoctoral fellowship in health policy and leadership at the Satcher Health Leadership Institute in Atlanta, Georgia. She is distinguished as a fellow of the American Board of Family Physicians and as a board certified family practitioner. She holds the distinction of being one of the small percentage of physicians nationwide to be board certified in medical bariatrics by the American Board of Obesity Medicine. She has held numerous leadership positions over her career span. Dr. Jada has numerous affiliations, including my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, always civic-minded. She serves her community by volunteering in various capacities. She enjoys most of her time spending it with her family. So, welcome, Dr. Jada.
Thank you
now,
so much for having me.
My good friend, Miss Deanna Phillips. So, as I told you, how I met Deanna was she set up my first medical practice. So Miss Phillips has been an independent medical consultant for over 20 years. She has a degree in healthcare management and healthcare administration. She is a nurse and a certified coder and auditor. She was the director of operations for 2 medical nonprofit organizations and the facility administrator for a national health organization. Ms. Phillips consults with physicians in all over, basically, but primarily in Michigan, Florida, South Carolina, and Georgia, and offers her expertise in practice development, reimbursement strategies, buyouts, and mergers. I'm telling you right now, if you are a physician, you need to set your practice up right ahead of time. This lady is the one that's going to be able to do it for you and make sure that you stay out of trouble in the process. Because we know plenty of doctors that have gotten in trouble by not setting their practice up right. So we don't want that. You need to call Deanna here. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about diabetes, and I'm just going to throw out some stats right there, right quick, and then I'm going to have Dr. Jada chime in with what she sees in her practice. I'll also piggyback off of what I see in my practice as well. So we know that more than 30 million people in the U.S. actually have diabetes, and 1 in 4 of them don't even know that they have it. Would y'all agree with that?
Absolutely.
Now, also, more than 84 million U.S. adults, over a third of them have what we call pre-diabetes. And 90% of them don't even know it. Y'all walking around here, y'all don't even know what's going on with your bodies. Diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death in the U.S., but I believe that that's underreported. It could possibly be even more. They don't know that they have it. So all we can go by are the stats that we have, and the stats say 7th leading cause of death. Type 2 diabetes. So there are different types of diabetes. We're going to go into each of those types. But type 2 is the most common and accounts for about 90% to 95% of all the undiagnosed cases of diabetes. And type 1 accounts for about 5% of them. We're going to tell you why that disparity is what it is. in the last 20 years, the number of adults that have been diagnosed with diabetes has more than tripled. And we can see that because people are now more obese, diets have changed, and probably not for the best. So, what do you think of those stats, Dr. Jada?
I think those stats are giving us a snapshot of where we are today, and it's giving us a projection of where we're going to be. If we've seen that number triple, we're going to see that continue to happen until we start to move the needle and turn things around in our country. And really, diabetes is becoming a worldwide issue. So with what we're hearing here, what we're seeing in the numbers, diabetes is one thing, pre-diabetes is the other thing that people are taking lightly. Sometimes we used to call it borderline. And now what we're seeing, though, is that pre-diabetes has some of the same impact to create complications over time. Because by the time most people are diagnosed with diabetes, they may have been pre-diabetic for up to 5 years.
Exactly. So here's the thing. Normally, and you brought up a good point, you have pre-diabetes, but you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know it. So there is not a diabetic who's not a pre-diabetic.
That's right. At some point, you were pre-diabetic.
At some point, you were pre-diabetic and could have caught it, but you didn't. Dina, what do you think about those stats?
But I think it's higher. And the reason I say that, I didn't know I had diabetes. The way I found out was I worked for a private physician, and I became ill. I had to be hospitalized. I ended up with pneumonia. Of course, they gave me hanging stroke, just like I had sugar, and my glucose went up to 500.
Wow.
So they knew that I had diabetes. But the ironic thing about it is, I had no signs of nothing. So if I hadn't gotten sick, there's no telling what could have happened to me.
I am so glad that you said that you did not have any symptoms, because usually you don't have any symptoms. Wouldn't you agree? Usually.
I agree for a long time, because what happens is people get accustomed to feeling tired. They get accustomed to certain symptoms that they kind of dismiss, or they put them off before they actually go and get help. Some signs, for example, that a person may experience is blurred vision. By the time you get blurred vision, your blood sugars have probably been well over 200 for a while. So they say, well, oh, I need to go get some new glasses. You wait 6 months, 12 months before you go get an eye exam. If that is the reason that you get diagnosed, a lot of times you end up, like Deanna said, in the hospital. You've ignored increased thirst. You've ignored increased urination. You've ignored numbness and tingling in your feet and toes, things that usually happen a little bit later in diabetes. So by the time people ignore so many symptoms, yeah, they had some. They just didn't acknowledge
You didn't listen to your body. Your body was telling you what was happening.
That's right.
This whole time, but you've ignored it.
Exactly. Denial.
Why? Please don't ignore any signs that you see in your body that's not quite right. You know your body better than your doctor does. We have to know. You have to tell us what those signs are. You have to be proactive about that.
That's right.
Because your life depends on that. Your life depends on the fact that you are being proactive and being an advocate for your own health. Let's talk about some risk factors for pre-diabetes. Because remember, we talked about you were pre-diabetic before you actually had that diagnosis.
That's right.
So, overweight,
yes,
over the age of 45 years old, vision problems. You have some kind of family member, be it a parent, be it a sibling, grandparent. Yes, you're not active physically. And when we say that, it's not just walking up and down. We're talking physical, aerobic kind of activity at least 3 days a week. And most people honestly don't get it. Our lifestyles are so busy.
Right.
And I can admit, sometimes, I'm real good about going to the gym 5 days a week. Sometimes one, if I get there. Okay. So I'm no different than you all are. Now, for women, this is what I see: gestational diabetes. So if you had a history of gestational diabetes and we were to treat that in your pregnancy, most likely you have increased your risk for having diabetes later down the road if you don't change some lifestyle.
That's exactly right. And a lot of times people will fail to remember that as part of their GYN history, their OB
Forget.
history. They forget, so they don't share that with their physician. Because the reason that it's important for us to know that in primary care is that we would screen you differently. We would screen you more frequently and earlier, because we can anticipate. The last time I checked, better than half of women over 5 to 15 years will develop diabetes who have had gestational diabetes. That means diabetes during pregnancy, which is what you manage. So you've got to remember that that is now a risk factor for you for your lifetime.
And also with gestational diabetes, a lot of times what we'll do when we bring women back, this is why your 6-week appointment is so important, because I actually retest you at 6 weeks.
Yeah. Yes. Follow-up is so key in a lot of ways. A lot of times I may diagnose someone with pre-diabetes and say, well, they want to opt for lifestyle management or lifestyle change, which I think is a great approach. And then you go ghost. You don't follow up. If I say follow up in 3 to 4 months, that's because I want to see what those numbers are looking like. I want to make sure we're turning those around and that they're not continuing to go up.
Yeah, there's a reason that we're telling you to come back and see us. We're not telling you that because we're going to make money off of you. We're telling you for your health and well-being.
Exactly.
So African Americans, Latinos are at a higher risk than whites for type 2. Now, type 1 is different.
It is different.
Type 1, whites are more common with type 1, but with type 2, which is what we said was the most common of the diabetes, you're seeing it in minorities. You're seeing it in Latinos and African Americans a lot more. Why do you think it is? Probably genetics?
I think a part of it is genetics. I think a big part of it is lifestyle, what we're eating,
I think
the
a big part
communities
of it
that
is
we're
lifestyle.
living in. Yeah, I think a large part of that is lifestyle. And the reason that we know that that is true as well is because we're seeing diabetes type 2. Type 2 being the kind that occurs after a certain age and is not related to a full deficiency of the body or inability of the body to make insulin. As a matter of fact, there's a distinction between type 1 and type 2.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, type 1, the pancreas, which produces insulin, it has two functions. It's an endocrine gland and an exocrine gland. Not to complicate things, that type 1, that person is not going to be able to produce insulin in an adequate fashion to manage carbohydrate metabolism in the body. That tends to be a younger person, a thinner person. These people with type 1 may even be diagnosed in early childhood, as early as 2 or 3 years old. In fact, some younger than that. So they cannot make insulin, and they must have insulin as a means of managing their diabetes, or it can be lethal.
Yeah, and a lot of times how we diagnose it in younger age people, they go into something called DKA. Let's talk about diabetic ketoacidosis, where the body is producing a lot more of the acid, and we see the ketones that are in the urine.
Yes.
And that can spell trouble for pretty much all of your organs.
That's right. And those are the people that show up in the ER in a diabetic coma. And that's a very, very serious situation. That is more common in type 1. Some type 2 will show up that way as well, as a distinction, type 1 from type 2. Type 2, that person is going to have the ability to make insulin. However, their insulin is not as functional. It does not work as well to bring the blood sugar levels down. So it's what we would consider insulin resistance. So the body does not metabolize what it brings in as a carbohydrate, which is transferred to glucose. It does not metabolize that well because of the dysfunction of insulin. So as I mentioned, one of the big issues that we're seeing now with these rising numbers, and the reason that we will see these numbers double and triple going forward, is because children are being diagnosed now with type 2. We used to only see that in adults, and usually adults over the age of 50. So we have an epidemic on our hands that we must get a handle on, or we're looking at literally what would be the shift for generations to come.
And not just we're diagnosing type 2 in children, we're diagnosing high blood pressure in children, high cholesterol in children. We got to change the way that we are living here.
Yes, and the interesting thing about it, and the challenging thing when we're diagnosing adult conditions in children, is that many of the medications that are used to treat these conditions, used to treat high blood pressure or used to treat type 2 diabetes have not been studied in children. So we are using what would be considered adult medications in children because we didn't see this coming and
Who
jump
would-
on it enough
Who would have thunk it?
research-wise.
Who would have thunk children would have adult problems? But here we are. They do. Now, we mentioned about, the age groups for type 1 versus type 2. Usually type 1 we're seeing in the children. However, adults can actually get type
That's right.
1. And so a lot of times what will happen is an adult is diagnosed with diabetes and we assume that it's type 1 and then we wonder why they're not getting better with their medicine. So now we've got to try to, figure out why exactly it is. A lot of times they got type 1.
Mhm.
So there really is no age limit on either of these types
That's
of
true.
diabetes,
That's
but
right.
it takes you to do some investigation between your primary doctor. Your primary doctor may also not feel comfortable in completely treating you. They may send you to an endocrinologist
Mhm.
for further treatment. And especially in the case of type 1, I think that the endocrinologist is probably the best person to be able to treat that. Would you agree with that?
I agree that there's certainly a great value in having a specialist on board because now there have been so many developments, especially with technology and how type 1 diabetes is first diagnosed and then second of all managed. A lot of movement is now going towards continuous glucose monitoring and continuous insulin therapy. That means that no longer are people having to stick themselves multiple times and then to get the blood sugar as well as sticking themselves to actually administer insulin. Now there are machines and technology that can monitor that stuff continuously from moment to moment, and they can be treated ongoing so that they don't have to have those peaks and valleys in their blood sugar. So an endocrinologist is a great place to be.
Absolutely. Some other risk factors for gestational diabetes. Now, one big risk factor, you had it in another pregnancy.
Yes.
Okay, you gave birth to a big baby. Babies that are over 9 pounds generally. You're overweight. You're older than the age of 25. You have a family history. You have polycystic ovary syndrome. Okay, that's a big one. And we mentioned about the minority population. So your African Americans, your Latino populations, your American Indian populations, your Pacific Islanders, all at risk for gestational diabetes. Now with type 1, it's a little bit different because it's maybe what we think is an immune reaction where your body, it's almost like an autoimmune disorder where your body is attacking itself and it didn't mean to do that. And so genetics plays a role in that. Having a parent, having a brother, sister, some kind of first degree relative increases your risk. And then we talked about the age. Generally, we're seeing it in younger, but once again, it's not, rare to see it in adults. Now, complications. Whole lot of them, and Deanna's going to talk about her complications. Deanna, you were diagnosed with which type?
Type 2.
Type 2. And when you got that diagnosis, what was going on through your head?
Well, basically, I should have known because I have a family history. My biggest error was not having my preventive care visits.
Okay, and when you say that you didn't, how long was it between the time that you saw a primary doctor to the time that you got your diagnosis?
What's so ironic, I work for
Oh, well, see there.
Wow.
Okay, so medical personnel, let me give you a disclaimer. Sometimes we self-diagnose, sometimes we think we know it all. And here's a prime example of why you should never diagnose yourself.
That's fine.
And sometimes we put ourselves on the back burner because we're so busy caring for everyone else.
But ironically, after I got out of the hospital with the diagnosis, at that time I could control it by food, by what I ate, my diet. But progressively, of course, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and I ended up having to get medication. So, here I am.
And when they started with the medication, what did they start you with?
It started me off with
Okay. And did that work for you?
It did not. So I've had various different oral medications until I ended up on insulin.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm on a sliding scale. I was on a long lasting and a sliding scale, but now I've gotten this under control where I don't have to hardly use insulin at all.
That's
Which is
good.
really good.
That's good. That's good.
It's really good. I got my A1C down from 9.0, which is horrible, to down to 5.6.
Wow.
That is great. Now, that's being
Wow.
responsible.
That's being responsible.
Once you got it, you knew what to do. You did it. That's great.
I did a lot of research to make sure I was eating the way I should, exercising the way I should. And one main thing that would be great if you center yourself around positive people who are going to influence you to do the right things. And you can just have a good attitude, and you can't change what happened in the past, but you can change the future.
That's it.
So
That's
I
right.
focus more on that than crying a pitiful story about what's going to happen. Now, seriously, diabetes is no joke. It's a killer. And I've had so many horrific things happen to me in the last 5 years. I came home from work and was sick, felt a little sick, got up to use the bathroom, I fell and coded right in front of my child. She happened to be at home, was able to call the ambulance, and they resuscitated me long enough to get me to the hospital, but when I got there, I coded again. They resuscitated me and got me upstairs to ICU, and the doctor, I was alert for the doctor to ask me a series of questions as to what happened. Did I take anything? I said no. And he told me, I got to put you in a coma to keep you alive.
Oh my word.
Because all of my organs had failed. My heart, my liver, my lungs, everything. My kidneys, all of it had failed. So I was in a coma for like 2 weeks. And they thought I wouldn't make it. Actually, you can't.
I remember that.
Yes.
I remember that
So,
clearly.
While I was in the coma, I had a stroke. Yeah, and I had pneumonia and flu. So
All that wrapped
I
up.
am a walking testimony. I'm trying to tell you.
Of 9 lives. She got 9
I
lives.
got 9. And even after that, I've had a series of things that happened to me. I've almost had my foot amputated. I've had a pleurisy catheter in my lungs, drain off fluid. I've had open heart surgery. I've had surgery in my eyes. There's not one part of my body that has not been cut on because of diabetes and hypertension.
Isn't that crazy? And you know, she touched on the complications, but these complications are real. These complications are what take people out, and you die from them. And you cannot sleep on them. You know, one of the big and leading causes of kidney failure is diabetes.
Yes.
Now, actually, your kidneys failed.
My kidneys failed, and I'm on dialysis as we speak.
But it wasn't a result of the diabetes.
No.
So this is a rare case. Usually it is.
Right.
And a lot of times people can't get off of dialysis.
That's right.
Oh yeah, that's because there's no changing
That's right.
the damage that has happened with the kidneys.
Exactly.
At that point, the dialysis is replacing what the kidneys would be doing on a day-to-day basis. And you can imagine if your kidneys are functioning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if you reduce that level of functioning and body and blood cleansing, if you reduce that to 3 days a week,
That's right.
from continuous all day every day to 3 days a week, you can imagine what that is doing to the system. It is a benefit, it is a help, but it is not a substitution for normally functioning kidneys.
It's not.
Absolutely.
And there's no reversal of that. The next option really beyond dialysis is transplantation. And that is not a very available or commonly available thing
No, it's
for
not.
option in our community, especially because we're not organ donors.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Not only that, you've tried to get on the
I've
transplant.
tried a couple of times, and there are so many things when you're on dialysis that you have to look out for not to mention your blood sugar, because they monitor that really close. But the possibility of you having too much calcium, too much
That's right.
phosphorus, too much protein, all of that affects you. It destroys
Yes.
anywhere you have a vein or artery can be destroyed, especially with diabetes. It can destroy it. And if those are destroyed, you cannot get oxygenated blood to your organs, which
No.
means your organs will begin to die and fail. And I'm trying to scare everybody up out there because it's no joke. You got to get a handle on it right now. Get your preventive care and make sure the doctors can tell you if you have diabetes, they're going to tell you what your function of your kidneys are at that time. When it really gets down, don't when they tell you it's at 5, your kidneys are function at 50%, you need to get on it because that means your kidneys are going down.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better.
She said it. She nailed it on the head. And here's what we're asking you to do as a primary care provider on that side of things. Really, what we're asking you to do is be responsible for your health before you even have to have that conversation. This is when you are diagnosed with pre-diabetes, even before that, to be honest. But once you've been, let's say you already know that you have elevated blood sugars or you know you have diabetes, don't be that person that's playing Russian roulette with your health.
That's right.
You either pay now or you pay later.
But you're gonna
But
pay.
you're going to pay.
Oh, yes, you are.
And if you cannot do it, if you cannot manage that and be responsible for your diabetes, for yourself, for your sake, think about the people around you,
Right.
the people who care about you, the people who will have to care for you. If something happens to you, if you end up with an amputation, who has to care for you to get you to and from?
And who has the money? Because let me tell
Right.
you, medical costs and loss of work, 327 billion with a B yearly. It costs for people that are diagnosed with diabetes. Can you believe that?
Oh, yeah, I can.
$327 billion. That's 327 billion reasons.
That's it.
You need to take control of your health and do not play any games.
Don't do it. And I can tell you, I have family members who are in their 30s and 40s who they know that they take their medications sporadically. They double up on it when their blood sugars are high, but they're eating M&Ms and drinking Mountain Dew, and then you double your medication, and you think that's gonna make it okay? You're only gonna be in your 30s for so long. You're only gonna be in your 40s for so long. But every day you live with your blood sugars elevated, just slow down.
Slow down. Let's talk about some of the symptoms.
With me,
Yeah.
of diabetes,
Yeah. What do you think? Because you clearly you have some symptoms, but you probably
I ignore
overlooked them. But what do you remember happening with
the main thing was the thirst. The thirst, being lethargic. Those are the two main problems I had. And then as it progressed, I had a lot more. My vision, I had cuts that would heal slowly, very slowly. All kind of things that was happening to me. My appetite was kind of funny. I started gaining a little bit of weight. You retain water weight too. I want you guys to know that. But I don't know. When my kidneys started failing with the diabetes, I didn't really think about the weight that I was gaining. It was water weight. I would get on the scale maybe every 2 days, and I noticed I would gain 5 pounds. And I was trying to wonder why. Why am I gaining this weight? But I never went to the doctor. You have to go to the doctor, guys. You can't get around it. Your treatment is so important. Catching these things early is life-saving. You have to go. And now I know there's a lot of health disparities out there that, people don't have insurance, worrying about how they're going to get to the doctor. But there are FQACs. There's community health centers that will help you, with income-based payment for primary care.
Mhm.
There's all kind of options, health fairs, everything. So don't give up on not going to the doctor. You can go to the doctor. You really can.
Absolutely. Some of the other symptoms. So Deanna touched on thirst. That's a big symptom. She touched on vision. Normally you have blurry or double vision. Talked about gaining weight, feeling very hungry,
Yeah.
which is probably how you're gaining the weight too, is because you're eating more than what you would normally be doing. Urinating
Yes. Yes. A lot.
frequently, not just every few hours,
Right.
like clockwork. You gotta go,
That's right.
and it almost is like you didn't empty your bladder.
That's right.
Okay,
Going.
you're just going.
Just going.
Cuts and bruises that don't heal as fast
Right.
as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
Weight loss. Now, generally speaking, with the weight loss, that's more with the type 1
Right.
than the type 2. Normally, type 2 is you're gaining the weight, like Deanna mentioned. But in type 1, you can see a lot of the rapid weight loss.
I
going
see it in
on.
type 2 also.
Mhm.
I do, and people feel quite happy about it. Like, they'll be like,
Don't be
"Ooh,
happy.
I lost 30 pounds in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, as your sugars are.
Let's be clear, that's a problem.
That's not normal.
That is not normal. Okay.
And also, you touched on the tingling. You can have the tingling in the hands and feet,
Yeah.
or even numbness. Like you may not feel anything, and you're cutting, and you don't even know that you cut yourself because you can't feel anything. Type 1. What kinds of symptoms are you seeing in type 1 besides the weight loss?
Usually type 1s, but when they're diagnosed, that's a pretty rapid onset.
Mhm.
It's like all of a sudden, within days to weeks, they have become extremely lethargic, extremely fatigued. They do have the increased thirst, the increased urination. A lot of times they may even have confusion or seem to have memory challenges,
And that may go along with the DKA because now your brain is not functioning properly as a result of that.
Yeah, clumsiness, forgetfulness, not seeming to be well. These people will begin to appear ill quickly,
very rapidly. And also, like sometimes in children, so children get potty trained at a certain age, and when you're potty trained, you shouldn't be wet in the bed anymore.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you have a non-potty trained child who's been potty trained for a couple years. Okay, you may need to start looking into why that is, and a lot of times it turns out there's type 1 diabetes.
Well, let me tell you, there's a story that is that my husband, we were at a family reunion in Arkansas, and at the time I think I was in medical school, maybe just into residency, and I was sitting in a place that I was near the door to the back. And the door kept coming. One little kid kept coming in and out of the door. And I noticed that he kept coming in asking for some water. First of all, a 3-year-old coming in asking for water.
That doesn't
back
happen.
Back and forth. Then he was going to the restroom and coming back. And I said to my husband, I said, I think he may have diabetes. So he said, look, don't say anything. His mom is very particular. She doesn't like people saying anything about her kids. She might get mad at you. Don't say anything. Do you know?
One of those sensitive people.
Yeah, one of those sensitive mamas. Do you know we went home from the family reunion. 3 days later, he found out that child ended up in the hospital.
With DKA?
DKA.
There you go.
He was found
He read the
unresponsive.
textbook, because that's a textbook.
Was found unresponsive. So, when you have a doctor around, we say something to you, don't be offended. We're just trying to help.
Absolutely. Like I said, this is not in it for the money for us.
No,
It's about taking care of you and your health, because we're not the ones that's sick and living with it. You are, and we want to be able to use our medical knowledge to be able to assist you. So please come and see a physician. I can't impress upon that enough, because not enough people are doing it.
No, they're not.
So let's talk about diagnosis and how you were diagnosed. What did they use to diagnose you?
Well, of course they already knew when my
Right.
sugar shot up, but Of course, there's a simple finger stick, and they also have glucose tests that they can do A1C. And my A1C came back extremely high. So that's how they diagnosed.
What was your A1C?
When I first was diagnosed, it was like 9.0.
What should it be?
The A1C really ideally should be less than 5.7. Less than 5.7, that means that you're at a lower risk, or there's an absence of risk for diabetes. When you get to 5.7 and you get up to about 6.4, then you're in that pre-diabetes range.
Right.
And that means that you're at risk. If you don't do something in pre-diabetes, the next step is diabetes. So this precedes diabetes. At that point, 6.5 or greater of a hemoglobin A1C is considered to be diabetes. Now, once you get into, you know that you have a diagnosis, then we shift that parameter for control of diabetes to about 7 or less. And in some age groups, we may even bend that a little bit because we don't want to risk hypoglycemia during treatment or low blood sugars.
Yeah, we got to keep a happy medium, you know, and it's like that too with blood pressure. You don't want to drop someone's blood pressure so low that they can't compensate for that. And that's the same thing with diabetes. You don't want to drop that blood sugar too low, and now the person can't compensate for that.
That happens because it happens to me. I actually worked for a physician's office, and I was on a side where everyone had gone home. And I took the insulin, and I took too much, and I tried to catch it, but it was too late. I totally bottomed out. Luckily, somebody was in the office and found me unconscious.
Wow.
And what happens when you bottom out?
You can feel it coming on, but you can tell you can't catch it. You just can't. You'll start sweating profusely. You know, you'll be delirious, and all of a sudden, you out. You don't remember anything.
When someone bottoms out, what do you recommend to get their blood sugars back up? I know what I recommend.
This is what I don't recommend. Do not go and find a whole bunch of candy.
Exactly.
Talking about I got to raise my blood sugar.
No, that's gonna overshoot you.
You gonna overshoot, then we got to deal with that. Usually, I recommend something like a piece of fruit if they can. I even recommend milk if they're not.
That's what I was gonna say. I do milk.
Yeah, milk if they're not glucose, because you don't have to have. Be mindful that carbohydrates are everywhere. So you just need a one that's going to quickly get into your system, and it doesn't take that long. A lot of people choose orange juice. If you're going to do orange juice, you don't need but a couple of swallows. You don't have to drink a gallon of orange juice to raise your blood
sugar. It'll
sugar.
raise it pretty quickly.
It will raise it pretty quickly. So those are my go-to, as long as that person is coherent and is not confused or anything, because we don't want to choke.
Now, as far as the candy, I keep peppermints. Little peppermints that people can suck on, and that will too raise up the blood sugar very quickly when you're doing that. I normally will give them a couple of them at a time that they can do that. But yes, please do not go out and get a Snickers.
No. Ice cream. No.
That would be
Milkshake,
negative. No.
Sweet tea. No.
Please do not do any of those things or anything similar to those things. We cannot put a stamp on those.
Unless, maybe on that moment it may be helpful too to talk about what can you do to avoid bottoming out.
Yes.
What can you do to even avoid getting to that point? Sometimes when people who are considered to be brittle diabetic, that means they have very, very particular balance of their autonomic systems and things like that. So they will vary quite a bit even within an hour time frame. But for those other people, eat on a schedule. Be mindful of what you're eating. Eat an adequate amount of protein, eat an adequate amount of carbohydrates within reason. Make sure you're getting your fruits and vegetables in. People say, well, you can't eat fruit, you have diabetes. It's not that you can't eat, you can't overeat.
Be careful with the types.
And the types of fruits. So you want to follow a low glycemic food eating index. But also is to make sure that you're not doing things like double and tripling your medication because you had something that you shouldn't have had yesterday or earlier that day, or you skipped 2 or 3 days last week, so I'm gonna triple what I take today. You really, the consistency, and once you begin to have that consistency, you begin to train your body how to function as close to normally as it would as you possibly can.
Dan, talk about your diet and how you keep your sugars even keel. Because you don't bottom out anymore.
No,
So
I've got it pretty much under control. I eat mostly vegetables and some lean meat. I very seldom eat potatoes, pasta, and things like that, rice. And I only eat chicken and fish. Sometimes I don't eat meat at all. I'll just eat beans or something.
Mhm.
But my diet is really restricted with diabetes and with kidney dialysis.
and with high blood pressure.
And with high blood
That's
pressure.
right.
So there's a lot. I have a real strict diet on a lot of things, but I'm also a caterer, so that helps. So I know how to cook the food
Right.
to make it taste like
She
something.
has catered for me, and I tell you that food was good. That food is good, but she can't eat it.
No, I can't eat it, but I still cook it, But it hasn't been that bad. It's a way of life. When you get that in your mind, that it's a way of life and not something that's temporary, you adjust to it.
You'll just to
Remember, we said pay now or pay
pay
later,
later.
but you're gonna pay.
but you're going to pay.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about diagnosing with the A1C,
Mhm.
but there are also a couple of other types, that we do. And one that I do for my pregnant patients, we do what we call glucose tolerance test.
Oh yeah.
And that's when we basically give you a bunch of sugar
Mhm.
that you drink.
Mhm.
And then we check your blood sugars about an hour or two after that to see what your blood sugars are doing. And usually when we do that, your blood sugar is supposed to be less than 140.
Mhm.
If it is greater than 140 but less than 200, now we're talking about the pre-diabetic
Mhm.
phase, and we're tightening things up for you.
Mhm.
Anything that's over 200, automatically you are diagnosed
Yeah.
with diabetes. The other one is fasting,
Mhm.
where you stop eating after a certain time, normally about 8 to 10 hours before the test. And then you come in and we check your blood sugars. And once again, if your blood sugars are greater than, I think with the fasting, we use 126.
Mhm.
So anything that is greater than that, now we're looking at you side eye.
Right.
Now we're wondering and wanting to treat you for the diabetes. And then also random. So sometimes, depending upon people's symptoms, hey, let's just go ahead and get a random stick
Exactly.
and see what that random
Mhm.
stick is. And if
Yeah.
that random stick is 200, that's the golden number. I'm
Exactly.
treating you.
That's right.
That's right. And don't
Right.
ignore it. Don't ignore it,
Mhm.
folks.
Don't think it's going away and you still continue to do what you're doing.
Exactly.
It's not. Well, it'll go away, but you may not be on this earth when it
Right.
goes away.
Right. There's one way to kill them.
That's one way. That's one way. So, we talked about some of the risk factors. We talked about some of the symptoms. Prevention, you touched on it a little bit. Losing weight.
Yes.
Because remember, we said that one of the biggest risk factors was being overweight. Now, the problem is, as we get older, we do tend to put on a little bit more weight. But you've got to try to keep that in check
Right.
as best as you can. And just by losing, you don't have to lose 20, 30, 40 pounds. You can lose as little as 10 to 15 pounds and still have a positive effect on your blood sugar, don't you
Right.
think?
Yes, typically what we see is about 10%. So we look at it according to the individual. So and so that number will vary in terms of the number that it takes to show some improvement. And 10% loss of body weight when you're overweight or obese can make a big difference in blood glucose, blood cholesterol, and that number may vary. So if you're 200 pounds, 10% would be 20 pounds. So that would take you from 200 to 180. Your body will behave differently at 180 than it does at 200.
And you'll feel so much better.
And you'll feel so much better.
Mhm.
If you're 300 pounds, then 10% of that would be 30. So if you lose that, so getting you to 270, beginning to take baby steps
Right.
towards reducing that weight goes a long, long way in how you feel. And if you're losing that way and you start to feel better, then it's easier and better for you to continue.
Absolutely. And, exercising, not everybody is an exercise guru and loves to exercise. Jada loves it. I generally love it. It depends on how much time I have, but I don't mind hitting the gym,
Mhm.
4, 5. Sometimes I've been up to 6 days a week. I at least give my body one day of rest between my workouts. But for most people, they don't like exercising. What kinds of things can you suggest to them to start that process of getting into the gym and in being more physically active?
Okay, that's a great question. And for a lot of people, we don't even necessarily have to use the term exercise. Exercise can, just the word of it can sound tiring, and it can sound like one more thing on your plate. Start by being physically active each day. That means move more every day. Move more than you did the day before. If you work from home, stand up. If you are standing up now, do your stairs in between breaks or while you're on a conference call. Walk up and down your stairs. Go to your mailbox 2 or 3 times. Simple things, and people have probably heard this before. When you go to the store, park at the furthest spot in the parking lot.
I do that.
My children cannot stand it. Why are you always
I'm trying to get my
parked?
steps in.
We're
So,
getting our steps in.
yeah.
You bring up a good point. Getting a fitness tracker so that it can remind you to get up out of your seat every 10 minutes to make sure that you're getting at least 250 steps per hour. The simple things like that. If you work in an office building, take the stairs instead of taking the elevator, up and down every time you come out, and make sure that you are actually getting some movement. Take your lunch break. If you take your lunch break, take your lunch. Do 15-minute lunch, and then do 15 minutes of walking around your building once or twice.
But on your lunch break, please do not smoke. Smoking, we did not talk about it, but smoking is actually a big risk factor. Please don't smoke.
Don't smoke and walk, please. People, just walk. So become more physically active. And another thing that people underestimate that's a great movement activity that's fun, and it helps to boost your energy, it helps to boost your mood, is dancing.
Oh, I love dancing.
Turn on your music in your living room, your basement, or whatever, and dance to 3 songs. Just dance. Just get it in. Dance to 3 songs. And you know what?
We've been dancing for 3 days straight with MoguleCon. Let me tell you, MoguleCon, we have had the best time. I have gotten in so many steps
without going to the gym.
Without going to the gym. This was my workout.
This is it.
MoguleCon.
That's what you want to do. That's what you don't. Fit it into your life. Fit it into the things that you're already doing. A lot of times when I'm walking, I take my hand weights with me, and I have little checkpoints that I'll do. Stop and do squats. I'll do lunges. I don't have to go to the gym and get on the machine because I'm building it in.
Done it.
It's all in the same 30-minute time period.
Oh my goodness, that's a hashtagable.
Hashtag.
Now, I would tell you, the American Diabetes Association actually has something called SMART goals. Have you heard of the SMART goals?
Yes.
So the SMART goals, they say, is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time specific.
Yes.
Rome was not built in a day, but you do need to have some checkpoints that you use when you're on the path and on your goal to having a lifestyle modification, because that's what we call it. It's a lifestyle modification. It's not that we're just treating a specific disease. We are changing your life. So some of the ideas with the word specific, the S in SMART, what exactly do you want to accomplish?
Right.
What do you want to accomplish? Decide who, what, when, where, why. Okay. Measurable. How you gonna track things? How will you know when you've made it to your goal? So I use 10,000 steps a day. That's one of my goals. And so I'm constantly looking at my watch, seeing whether or not I'm making my steps the way that I'm supposed to. Now, whatever you do or whatever you choose, that's fine, but that's my way of checking my progress. So I am doing something measurable. Attainable. Is this meeting the goal? Do you have everything that you need to make it happen? Because you can make goals all you want, but can you make it happen? So and be realistic. Like, don't set these unrealistic goals like I want to lose 100 pounds in 3 weeks. Well, that's not going to happen. That's not attainable. That is not realistic. Set a goal of 10 pounds. That's attainable. That's more realistic, but you also got to put yourself on a time scale. Okay, I'm going to do this in the next month.
That's right. Because if you don't, it'll keep getting pushed off and pushed off because you add 10 more things to your plate before you get this thing down pat.
Absolutely.
And so creating this as a lifestyle means that this is something that is a part of what you do. And so you have to build it into your schedule. If you don't have time, make it. If you can't, which we can't create time anyway. We designate it and we get into action.
Yeah, I agree with that. How did you meet your SMART goals?
Well, some of my main goals were to make sure I set a date to have all of my preventive care done. Like for diabetics, you need to have a podiatrist visit, your dentist visit. You need to have your regular primary care visit, your GYN, your eyes. Those are some of the basic primary things, and I try to schedule them all in the same month so I won't miss them. And
I like that idea. Schedule it in a certain time frame so that you don't get confused about,
That's right.
okay, I got an appointment here, but then I don't have another one for 2 months. And that's how you start missing things.
And the other thing I do that's important, I make sure I schedule my flu shot during the right time. When it's available, I make sure I schedule that because diabetics are very susceptible to getting the flu and pneumonia. So you need to get your shot.
Absolutely. So I like that idea of being able to set things. And for you, that was attainable. That was realistic. For someone else, that may not work. Whatever it is for you, set it and do it.
That's it.
Set it and do it.
Just do
Easy
it.
peasy.
Nike said it best.
Easy peasy.
And I want to say I'm an advocate for healthcare all the way, and I share whatever information that I have since I have been blessed with the information and the knowledge base. So I have a page called Chronic Kidney Failure. It ain't over on Facebook. It's open, anybody can join, but it has a lot of information about diabetes, hypertension, and things you can do to avoid it. And also, if you need help with getting your doctor's visit, places where you can go that won't cost you much money, things of that sort, I can help you with that. So if you can get on Facebook and get to that page, you can send me a message and I will help you find you a doctor.
Give me that page again.
It's chronic kidney disease. It ain't over.
Now, Jada,
Yes.
how often should they be getting their eyes checked?
Routinely, at least once a year. At least once a year. As long as you get a clean bill of health once a year is good. It's adequate. Some people, if you have any abnormal findings on that eye exam, may have to go in more frequently because what we know with diabetic eye disease is that you're also susceptible to other things like glaucoma as well.
Exactly.
So then you need to be screened for that and monitored for that on a regular basis. If you add diabetes plus a family history, then you're really, adding even more risk, or you're upping your risk. You're going from being average risk, the average population, to high risk. And so it'll be important to stay on top of that. And let me just say, you do not want to lose your eyesight.
No, you don't.
No.
You don't want to lose your eyesight.
Not at all.
You do not want to compromise your eyesight. That's one of the biggest reasons for loss of independence for patients who are dealing with complications from diabetes. And when you're busy and you're running around and you think that that lifestyle will never change, and you are dependent all of a sudden on someone else because you cannot put your hand in front of your eye and see it.
That's a big
Big difference. And then we see that those kinds of complications lead to things like depression and irritability. And then we begin to see a downward shift. Losing your eyesight is a really, really big challenge. Your license is revoked from you. You can no longer drive. You're dependent on other people for a ride. And it does not have to be one of those situations where it's a slow process. You could wake up one day and not be able to see as a complication of diabetes. No advance warning or no advance warning that you acknowledge, and it is irreversible. So here again, this underscores what we've already said before, is that you have got to be responsible for this diagnosis. What happens to it is on you. You can control this and live a healthy, happy life and future, or you can mess around and take your time and have do this. And again, we said it before, you can pay now
Pay
or
later.
pay later.
But you gonna pay. Jada, tell me about the services that you provide with your practice.
Our practice focuses on medically supervised weight loss. As a bariatric specialist, a medical bariatric specialist, I'm the non-surgical component to weight loss in people from a medical perspective. We do not perform surgery, so we don't do any gastric bypass or lap bands or balloons or anything like that. We work with people, first of all, to figure out what are root causes for your condition. Your condition being even obesity, if that is the kind of driving force, which behind type 2 diabetes, especially obesity, is usually a culprit. So what we're looking at is what things are contributing to this, because at the end of the day, what it boils down to is metabolism. Weight loss happens as a byproduct of fixing the metabolism. So we have to understand what things are creating or challenging that metabolism that has caused it to slow down, to cause it to go from a fat burning machine to a fat storing machine. A lot of times insulin can be a culprit for that as a hormone, and many other hormones can be involved with that as well. If you don't know what to look for, you won't find it. And if you find it, you won't know what to do with it. So that's where we come in. That's our specialty. That's where we spend a lot of time, a lot of training, a lot of investment to being sure that we're doing the very best that we can to help solve those problems for each individual. And so we take each person as they are, uniquely you, and we work with you in multiple capacities to ensure that we're safely and skillfully reducing your weight.
Dr. Jada, how can people find you?
You can find me, first of all, if you want to use your phone number, my phone, you can do 404-464-8749. That's in Atlanta. We do see patients outside of Atlanta. Our office is at 4553 North Shaliford Road, Suite C90, Atlanta, Georgia. We're one exit from Perimeter Mall if you're in the Atlanta area. But remind you, we do have patients that we see in the office, and we do have virtual appointments available as well. If you want to look us up on the internet, you can go to www.startwithreal.com. That's startwithreal.com. And REAL is an acronym for Renew, Empower, Achieve, Live. So if you want to remember what REAL stands for, it's Renew, Empower, Achieve, Live. Of course, we're on Facebook as Real Weight Loss Pros, at Real Weight Loss Pros. And we're also on Instagram with the same name, at Real Weight Loss Pros. And you may find me there as well as Dr. Jada, the Real MD.
Well, I am so blessed to have had these two wonderful guests, Dr. Jada Moore Ruffin and Deanna Phillips, taking their time out to hang with me so that I can get you all in the know. It is so important if you are in need of a primary care specialist. Here's one that I recommend. If you're in need of an advocate, here's one I recommend. You cannot let your health take a back seat at all. You have got to be in control at all times. Your body is your temple and should be cared for properly. I'm going to leave you with two scriptures that I thought were so appropriate. Matter of fact, one of the scriptures Dr. Jada used today in her TED Talk. Both Dr. Jada and I did TED Talks for the MoguleCon. And we talked about health and how health actually can affect your business. So here they go. 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 6. Say to him, long life to you, good health to you and your household, and good health to all that is yours. The second one is 3rd of John chapter 1, verse 2. This is the one that Dr. Jada actually used. So it's so funny we were on the same wavelength. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and all that may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. Until the next time we are together, many blessings and good health to you. Thank you for listening to the Health Tips with the Nation's Bedside Doctor on 108 Praise Radio, where we are voicing the gospel.